What's going on, everyone? Scurvy here, giving everyone kind of their first look at the what I call the Mad Ras 110. I'm a self-proclaimed RAS junkie, and tried to load this thing up with as many fairy RAS as I could. You know, with a couple of exceptions, of course. A couple of Tangs, a Mandarin, an Antheus, etc. Anyway, it's kind of the first real look. Haven't done a detailed view of this thing yet. We are running a couple of Orphic V4s up there. I ran one on my old tank and moved it over and added a second to this guy. It's 4 feet long, 2 feet wide, 22 inches high. Comes in at about 110 gallons. Half-inch glass, half-inch Starfire glass. Tank came from Crystal Dynamic Aquariums out in California. CD Aquarium, in case anyone wants to look. But very happy with the tank. Crystal clear. There's a couple of nice finish touches on it. Reinforced corners. Kind of gives it a picture framed look. Going bare bottom. So it's got a starboard bottom there. And it's double Euro braced. Euro braced on the bottom and Euro braced up top as well. Rigged up a DIY, though it's actually the Red Sea kit, but I hooked up a little handle there to pull it up and down when I feed. And yeah, so I'm about done stocking fish. I've thrown some corals in there. You know, the tank's only been up and running now about 4 months. So having some success with the corals. LPS are doing good. Got a couple torches there. A couple of smaller random pieces I've thrown in. A Duncan. Another hammer here that's struggling there. A little too much flow. And some sticks that I've pulled out of the old tanks or pulled out of the old tanks and maneuvered around. Some faring better than others. Did manage to bring Aptasia in already. 4-month-old tank. Pretty upset about that. But we'll get that under control. We'll get a fish or get some nudies in to knock them out when we're ready here. But we're getting close to go time on corals. 4 months it's been up. Plan to be SPS heavy. Some of them are really happy, while others have struggled. So we'll get that squared away. But for now, I spent the first few months focusing on fish. Got the tank stocked to about where I want it. I may add a couple of more. Looking for a couple of specific wrasse, a lineatus or a rhomboid. Just a couple of really unique fish to kind of top off the fish stock. Let's move down here, take a quick look at the sump. We are running a Triton sump. Let me get that dosing container out of the way. Not doing anything. So I went with the Triton style sump on this. It's the trigger. It's the version 1 trigger Triton sump. So Fuge is doing really, really well. Actually needs to be harvested again. You can't quite see it, but it's jam-packed full of Chaeto, growing like crazy. Running a Kessel up top there for to light the Fuge, and just a run-of-the-mill Amazon LED light strip. Give me some light in the cabinet. Couple of Apex dose for the Triton Elements. I'm only dosing about once a week right now, just to try and keep things as stable as I can, but admittedly I don't test nearly enough. I think I've tested twice in the 4 months this thing's been running. Nios 120 there, brought over from the old reefer. Had to put it on a stand to get it up a little higher out of the water. I think it's a 3-inch stand there. So it sits in about 7.5, 8 inches of water. BRS carbon reactor I just threw in the front there. It's easy to access, kind of out of real estate as far as hanging it up top there. So whatever, I just pull it out, toss it in a bucket, swap out the carbon. During a water change every, once a month or so. Am doing water changes still. Really going to the tank, just no schedule really, just kind of every 2, 3, 4 weeks I'll drop 30-gallon water change. Got a Brightwell brick there, loaded that thing up with Microbacter 7 probably about right around the 2-month mark. I was starting to see a small dino outbreak, even though my nitrates and phosphates were I'll say through the roof. Nitrates are around 50 or 60. Phosphates were at, I forget what the number was. It was like a 160 on the Hannah checker, which I forget what that comes out to. Point 0.3 maybe, I forget. Anyway, the NIO skimmer kicking ass. I thought about upgrading it to the 160. It is the 120. It's a little small for a 130-ish gallon system. But I figured with all the talk of people stripping their water with Triton and low nutrients, I figured the smaller skimmer might be beneficial. So we'll keep running it. As you can see, it's pulling out some nasty crap. Empty that about once a week as usual. Most people really can't zoom out here. New phone, so getting a much more quality picture than I ever used to get with my old iPhone. Yeah, so that's it for the sump area here. Running the Apex, obviously, you see the 2 doses. I've also got the Core 15 return pump. It's the one you have to run with the Apex. You can't run that one independently. Check valve on the return. I actually just cleaned that out. The Kessel was growing algae, obviously in the fuge, but it was growing algae well in the skimmer, and some algae in the check valve, which so I cleaned that out as best I could. Cleaned the skimmer out last week one day, and then took this spare piece that came with the sump. It's kind of a smoked piece of acrylic. It's actually a second drain compartment. So if you didn't use the standard plumbing, you could use this insert and drill it to your liking. Anyway, I threw it up as a shield to kind of block the light from hitting the skimmer. So far, so good. It's only been a week, so hard to say. All I can say is I hope it slows the algae growth so I don't have to clean it as often. I just fed, so the skimmer isn't doing much at the moment. But really happy with this sump. I know they've come out with a version 2, which had some filter socks, in the drain section. I think that would be phenomenal to have, because I do get a good amount of detritus floating in the water. I keep flow cranked up pretty well using the, I went all Apex on this sucker. So I'm using the Apex Waves. Pretty darn happy with them. They push a ton of water. Still kind of experimenting with where I'm going to keep them placed. Had them on the back glass for the first few months, but it really limited the amount of flow I could, the percentage I could run them at. I think I was at a max of about 20% on either of them at any given time. And by moving them to the side, I've been able to crank that up quite a bit. So really happy there. Just about time to get serious with corals. Again, the stuff that's in here now is just stuff I've had in my old tanks. Threw them in here to just keep it moving. But we'll pull those. I'm going to keep the torches. I'm going to pull the hammers, put them in another tank. And then you see here these are called wrasse dens. Fill them with sand, and your sand sleeping wrasses have a place to call home. Right now I've only got the one radiant wrasse that sleeps in the sand, but at some point I do want to add a couple leopards. Not sure if I'll do a trio of one species or a mix, but yeah, you know, like I said, I'm getting pretty close to stocked on fish, but being a wrasse junkie, it's one day I want leopards, the next day I want a couple more fairies, so we'll see what happens and what presents and go from there. Let's see, we'll take a quick look at the equipment cabinet that's a mess, or the electrical cabinet, I should say. Pretty nice. This tank comes with the option to have a electrical cabinet. I put mine on the left side here. You know, got the Apex display, the Amazon, what do you call it, Alexa integration. That's the Core 15 piece up top right there. Heater controllers, and then just a mess of cables. You guys know the drill there. Put in wire management in hopes of keeping this nice and tidy, but you know the drill. Once you close that stuff up, accessing anything's a pain in the butt. And yeah, just not interested. So anyway, that's a look at that. And that's the first real look at the tank. I'm hoping these Orphics do some serious work when I start loading sticks in here. And that's coming in the short future, or the near future, or however the hell you want to say it. All right, folks. Hope all's well. Hope everyone's reefs are happy. And party on.